Joining me now is Reverend Tom Otieno, Anglican Church of Kenya. Rev, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. Against a backdrop, of course, of a Catholic Church that is growing faster in Africa, I suppose, than anywhere else. According to the latest figure, Africa accounting for 20% of Catholics worldwide. Africans are beginning to ask the question, is it time to elect an African Pope that will represent, I suppose, the needs of Africa, or are the odds still against an African Pope?
I think right now we stand a better chance because, of course, first of all, it needed to get out of Italy, and it did that with John Paul II. And then it needed to get out of Europe, and it did that with Bergoglio, Francis I, Pope Francis I, who has just passed on. And so the speculation right now is for the papacy to be considered global and the Catholic Church to be considered truly global, that it should either go to Asia or Africa. And Africa, having the fastest growing number of Catholics, stands a better chance because of just that fact. That first, we are many, and then secondly, we are the fastest growing in terms of the Roman Catholic Church. So I think it is time for an African Pope.
Many African churches, or many African Catholics, if you want, in particular, have said that they felt some kind of kinship with the late Argentine pontiff, Pope Francis. Do you think this kind of focus that he would have had on Africa could have a dramatic influence on who the next Pope would be?
I think so. I think Pope Francis I brought certain very important elements to the papacy that have endeared him to Africans. First of all, his genuine heart caring for the poor. And we have a very significant conversation about the poor here in Africa. Secondly, his concern about good governance and integrity in leadership. And we know that most of our African problems are basically right down to integrity in leadership. Thirdly, his humility. You know, he wasn't the pompous Pope. I think as Africans, we have an affinity for humility because we would like to see a servant leader rather than a reigning king. And I think the fourth thing was his concern for global issues, and the fact that he was in touch with global issues and showed concern for issues that affect Africa. I mean, we felt that he was genuinely a partner in African issues. So I think that really caused the papacy to be close to the African Roman Catholic Church. And I think those factors then have made the African Roman Catholics feel that it is their time. Because if an Argentine can do it and do it so well, then everybody can, and especially an African should. I think that is what will really make a statement. For me right now, the strategic way to do this election is to make a statement about the global Roman Catholic Church, and that's why it's time for an African.
Some 18 cardinals possibly from Africa. Who amongst those do you think should certainly be cited amongst the front runners?
Well, certainly the senior Africans are the ones that should be cited. We know there are front runners among those, but it can go to anybody. When John Paul was elected, he was elected in his early 50s. And sometimes we look at age, but I think the way that the Vatican conclave thinks is very, very different. They can consider age, but I think they also consider the dynamics. How dynamic is someone? What gifting does the person bring? And how in touch is that person with global issues? And how much value will they add to the papacy in terms of the Roman Catholic Church? So I think at this time it's difficult to point that out. I think any of them is able to take it home, if you ask me.
There are some who have cited Ghanaian Cardinal Peter Turkson as a potential, I suppose, with a long-time relationship that he would have had also with the Pope Francis. Others saying there are also some similarities in as far as their personality is concerned. There are virtues of humility, simplicity, compassion, love for the poor, and the needy, and compassion for the earth.
He certainly stands head and shoulders above the rest. I would give my vote to him myself. But, you know, that is not always a factor. Sometimes I find that the conclave makes some very interesting decisions about who comes next. For instance, when they needed someone to succeed Ratzinger, the Pope Benedict XVI, who hailed from Germany, we thought that they would probably look alongside a theologian, you know, a person who was strong in matters of liturgy and doctrine. But they went the way of Bergoglio, Francis I, which was very, very different. So yes, I am with, my vote would definitely go to the Ghanaian, but I am open to the conclave looking another way.
Across Africa, of course,
provided it's an African, I'll be very happy.
Yeah,
I'll be very, I'll be very flattered by that. Nicely, yes.
Across Africa, there's a need, of course, for more peacemakers, if you like, and this is a sentiment, I suppose, that would resonate with many. Do you think the papacy being from Africa would really help in that endeavor?
I think yes. I think if we got an African, the papacy would be closer home, and therefore it would be easier for African leaders to relate with the papacy and to listen to the papacy. Because the papacy is a very, very strong office, global office, that is very, very compelling. And what the papacy says is listened to. The papacy has access to every single leader in the world. So I think having an African papacy would really push the African agenda forward economically, in terms of leadership, economically in terms of resources. We really need a person to call out people who steal from this continent, people who practice unfair trade practices, the things that really, really hurt Africa. But of course, we also need an African Pope who will call out African leaders and call African leaders to order, because a lot of our problems are home generated. So I think that the case for an African Pope would really work and push the African agenda forward.
Yeah. But as you put it, all options remain open, at least as far as the 18 cardinals are concerned at this particular point.
That is correct. And I mean, I've never been able to second guess the conclave, because when I thought they would do continuity, then they would go the other way. I would certainly like continuity in that, because I mean, Pope Francis's papacy was very refreshing. It was a breath of fresh air, and I mean, the world needed more of that kind of person who would retain fidelity to scripture, but also build bridges and be able to make the gospel more about everybody and relevant to everybody, and make the gospel something that everybody would like to associate with. So yes, in that case, then the Ghanaian fits the bill perfectly and would basically take it to the next level.
Rev, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Rev Tom Otieno, Anglican Church of Kenya, joining us there.